This film is based on a true story. A man named Emmanuel is completely blind, but despite this, he lives alone. After breakfast, Emmanuel went for a walk in the park. He sat down on a bench, pulled out his notebook and began to draw. Everyone around him wondered how a blind man could be an artist. Emmanuel teaches evening classes at a local school. Paula, the founder of a charity, told him that there's a new girl in his class. The girl's mother is always at work, so she has no one to leave her daughter with. But Emmanuel doesn't care about that. He generally doesn't care about anyone. Aya is the only girl in the class. She was very surprised to find out that the professor is completely blind. Today, Emmanuel gave the students an assignment to draw a heart. Later after classes, the girl's mother Maria came for her and was outraged that the teacher had left Aya alone. The amazed girl showed the mother her portrait drawn by the blind teacher. She can't understand how this is possible. The mother confessed that she quit her job today, so they would have a hard time again. The housekeeper stole 10 euros from Emmanuel, thinking he wouldn't notice. However, she didn't consider that blind people have a heightened sense of hearing. Of course, Emmanuel immediately fired the housekeeper. She begged him not to tell Paula anything. The mother and daughter are refugees from another country and live very poorly. Now they will have to move out of this apartment. Aya said that she was being teased at school. The mother asked her to endure. They fled from their home country due to war, so no difficulties can compare to what they faced before. The next day, Maria confronted Emmanuel for leaving Aya unsupervised yesterday. Emmanuel replied that he is not a nanny, and if they were dissatisfied, they can leave. Later, Emmanuel did tell Paula that the housekeeper had been stealing from him. Now he needs a new cleaner. Paula offered to take in the mother and daughter. Maria will do the cooking and cleaning in exchange for a roof over their heads, while looking for a new job. Emmanuel was not thrilled with this idea, but eventually agreed. He was very cold towards the guests, showing Maria and Aya their new room. At night, the mother and daughter woke up from hearing a cough. Aya peeked into Emmanuel's room and saw him looking out the window. Aya thought that Emmanuel was just pretending to be blind, but her mother said it was nonsense. Emmanuel meanwhile remembers how he started going blind as a teenager. It is an inherited, irreversible disease. His mother told him never to let fear win. According to her, even living in darkness, one can be a happy person. The next day, Emmanuel told a friend that he was not happy about having 2 migrants living in his house. The friend as usual was joking around with him. Maria was found by her former employer Livio, who is also her persistent admirer. Hearing the argument, Emmanuel came out of the apartment and chased the man away. Before leaving, Livio gave Maria her last paycheck. That same evening, Emmanuel was pleasantly surprised, sensing the appetizing aroma of food. It was Maria who had cooked dinner. She also informed him that they had been given a room in the dormitory, so they would not bother him anymore. Maria and Aya are waiting for a bus at the stop. Suddenly Emmanuel came out of the house, asking if they had left yet. Turns out Emmanuel changed his mind. He no longer objects if the mother and daughter will live in his house. Emmanuel's students saw an advertisement in the newspaper. Any citizen who informs the police about serious crimes will receive a cash reward, even if the report is anonymous. The guys were puzzled when they learned that Aya and her mother had moved into the professor's house. Aya was too naive and didn't understand why they were so surprised. At home, Aya takes a video with her phone of Emmanuel's flute play. The girl is interested in Emmanuel's creative abilities. She asked him if he could draw a portrait of God. Emmanuel replied that to do so he needs to hear his voice. That's exactly how he draws people, sensing each of them by their voices. Emmanuel admitted that he dreams of going to a Japanese clinic where they have invented a new method that allows even such patients as him to restore sight. However, it's very expensive. Meanwhile, a TV presenter named Desiree is arguing with her producer on the phone. The ratings of their show are dropping, they need to come up with something urgently. Alessia, the assistant, showed her a video on the internet, in which a completely blind man draws portraits of people. Aya was the one who filmed this video and posted it online. Emmanuel asked Maria why she came to Italy without her husband. With tears in her eyes, Maria said that her husband passed away. Luckily, Aya was too young to remember that. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. It was Emmanuel's friend who came to tell him the excellent news. It turns out Emmanuel received an invitation to a talent show. Emmanuel doesn't understand how this is possible, since he didn't make any video. The friend suggested that one of the students did it. Emmanuel realized it was Aya. Emmanuel absolutely doesn't want popularity, but Paula thought it was a good opportunity to earn money for the operation. That's why Aya did the right thing, not asking Emmanuel's permission to make the video. Emmanuel is pondering whether he should participate in the show, which is not popular on television. Later, Emmanuel recalls visiting his mother, who due to dementia doesn't even recognize him anymore. He helps her take her medication to ease condition. More than anything, Emmanuel wants the mother to remember his name at least once. Emmanuel eventually decided to go to the auditions, accompanied by his friend. Often many people come here who have no talent at all, but have an immeasurable arrogance. Desiree, the producer and the director of the show, were impressed with Emmanuel's self-confidence, who didn't resemble a typical disabled person. When Emmanuel drew an accurate portrait of the director, everyone was amazed. Soon Emmanuel performed on the show, drawing portraits of each participant. Of course, Emmanuel became the winner of the first stage and received a prize of €5,000. After the show, the friend brought Emmanuel home. Aya and Maria congratulated him on his victory. Emmanuel intends to give Aya 10% of the winnings when he gets the money, as it is thanks to her that the world learned about him. Soon Emmanuel participated in a new episode of the show. The audience was delighted with his eccentricity and talent. Now Emmanuel has become a celebrity, his face printed on the covers of popular magazines. However, the other participants of the show and the hosts don't like that Emmanuel constantly insults them. Desiree again conflicts with the producer, believing that they should change Emmanuel's image. That's what Desiree and her assistant got down to. Emmanuel continues to participate in the show, raising its ratings on television. However, Alessia clearly doesn't like that Desiree thinks only about money, not taking into account Emmanuel's emotional state. The students organized a small party for the professor to congratulate him on his success. Later, the guys proposed a business idea to him, to open a massage parlor with additional services. However, Emmanuel categorically refused, threatening the guys that if they do this, he will turn them into the police. The guys left very angry. The bar owner, who is courting Maria, asked Emmanuel for a private conversation. Livio thinks that Emmanuel wants to date Maria and asks him to back off. Emmanuel responds by speaking very unflatteringly about Livio. Emmanuel really befriended Maria, who helps him around the house. Suddenly Emmanuel told Maria that Livio seems to truly love her. Emmanuel suggested that she spend the day with Livio tomorrow, while he will take a walk with Aya in the park. Maria decided to agree to this. The next day in the park, Emmanuel noticed that Aya was upset about something. She confessed that two girls from school constantly tease her and broke her smartphone. Emmanuel confessed that he went through the same thing at school, but he didn't give up. His words gave Aya confidence. The friend reminded Emmanuel that he has a rehearsal today. Emmanuel planned to walk there. Aya is continuously amazed at how Emmanuel can navigate the streets without sight. His friend said that he knows all these places, as he used to visit here often with his mother. Walking past a football field, Emmanuel remembers how many years ago as a teenager, he too loved to play football. Thinking about this, Emmanuel almost cried. Meanwhile, Maria met with Livio. He said that he really loves her and regrets his intrusive behavior. Emmanuel decided to introduce Aya to Desiree, but then changed his mind, saying that he needs to visit someone very dear to him. They came to a nursing home, where Tasha, Emmanuel's former teacher, lives. She taught him a lot, including music, so Emmanuel cherishes their friendship. Aya feels uncomfortable in this place. Tasha, noticing this, gave her some money to buy herself hot chocolate. Tasha has repeatedly seen Emmanuel on television. She's surprised at this because it's not like Emmanuel, who always strived to keep away from people. They played a duet, just like in the good old days. Meanwhile, Aya saw a crying girl and asked what happened. The girl with tears in her eyes said that she came to her grandmother who didn't recognize her due to Alzheimer's and didn't even take the flowers. The girl handed Aya the bouquet, asking her to give it to someone dear to her. Aya sincerely thanked her and brought the bouquet to Tasha, who was very pleased to receive the gift. Everyone applauded their performance. After this, Emmanuel and Aya walked in the park. Some blind man was begging. Emmanuel never did this because he hates being pitied. He has self-respect. At some point, Emmanuel realized that this man was a fraud and asked Aya to check this. When she took his money, he immediately noticed it. This is how Emmanuel exposed him and threatened to call the police if he doesn't leave. The man put on a show and said he did this because his wife is very sick and their pensions are very small. Aya eventually returned his money. She wonders how Emmanuel knew that this man could actually see everything. Emmanuel replied that he simply feels such things. He wanted to visit his mother and asked Aya to accompany him. They came to a bench on which Emmanuel's mother's name was scratched. To remember her, Emmanuel comes here instead of to the cemetery. Emmanuel confessed that he doesn't remember his father, who passed away a long time ago. This unites Emmanuel and Aya because she too has lost her father. They understand each other like no one else. Just as they were about to leave, the police arrested Emmanuel out of the blue. All the news reported that Emmanuel was detained on suspicion of improper actions towards Aya. Desiree saw an advantage in this because now their show would become even more popular. Desiree went out to the journalists, and pretending to cry, claimed she didn't expect such a horrible act from Emmanuel. She allegedly believes this is all just a mistake. The detective invited Maria for a talk and said that they received an anonymous call about Emmanuel and Aya. Maria doesn't believe this, considering Emmanuel a good person. Aya also categorically denies any guilt on Emmanuel's part. It turned out that the students whom Emmanuel refused to help with their business decided to take revenge and slander him. When Paula found out about this, she was furious. She has devoted her life to charity and helping people, but what these guys did pissed her off. The police were searching Emmanuel's apartment. The detective found it strange that there are many paintings in his home, which he can't even see. Perhaps Emmanuel is only pretending to be blind. But even more curious to the detective were the drawings, which included one of Maria. Emmanuel is in jail and can't hold back his tears. Later, he was allowed to meet with Desiree, who brought a lawyer and reported that their editorial office would cover all the costs. Emmanuel considers all the accusations against him absurd. Later the lawyer, who got Emmanuel house arrest instead of jail, asked him not to talk to the press and to entrust the case to him. The most important thing for them now is to convince the public of his innocence. A crowd of journalists was waiting outside the house. Seeing Emmanuel, Aya hugged him in tears. This convinced the journalists that he never did anything bad. However, some are confused by the provocative drawings found in his home. The lawyer took control of the situation and took Emmanuel into the house. Paula and the friend were very happy about his return. Paula stayed at Emmanuel's house to help him. Emmanuel suffers from insomnia, not knowing what awaits him now. Paula doesn't like that Desiree is exploiting this situation for her own gain. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. It was Aya, who had come against the officer's orders to see Emmanuel. She said her mother had made up with Livio, who turned out to be a good guy. Emmanuel was glad they were fine, but he asked Aya to leave before the police noticed she'd been here. From Emmanuel's reaction, Paula guessed that he was in love with Maria. Soon at the request of the detective, an ophthalmologist checked Emmanuel's eyesight and confirmed that he was completely blind, not pretending. Taking the opportunity, Emmanuel asked if the Japanese innovative method of restoring vision was effective. The ophthalmologist said that no surgery would help with such pathology. Hearing this, Emmanuel was broken. Maria told Livio that she had no idea that Emmanuel painted her portraits. She believes Emmanuel has always been very lonely, so he shut himself off from the world, but she and Aya changed that. The lawyer came to Emmanuel and told him that all charges against him had been dropped, there wouldn't even be a trial. However, Emmanuel didn't even smile. Later, the detective told Emmanuel that he could demand compensation for the illegal arrest. But Emmanuel doesn't want anything from them. Thanks to this hype, the TV show made it to prime time, but Emmanuel no longer wants to participate. Now that he knows the surgery is useless, he has no more motivation. Paula asked him not to give up. Perhaps the ophthalmologist was wrong. The friend arrived who had been attacked on the street because he allegedly supports the criminal. Emmanuel was sorry to hear that. In the end, Emmanuel agreed to participate in the show's finale, but he has one condition. Soon the finale took place, where the participants showcased their talents to the audience. It was Emmanuel's turn to take the stage. He drew a portrait of one of the spectators. The audience was holding its breath watching this. Seeing the result, everyone gave a standing ovation. Of course, Maria, Aya and Livio were also in the hall. Emmanuel emerged as the winner and received a prize of €1,000,000. Desiree announced that after the commercials Emmanuel would give a speech. That was his condition. During the break, Emmanuel asked Alessia what a woman like her was doing in a place like this, as she is a good person, which cannot be said of Desiree. Emmanuel advises Alessia to change her life as soon as possible. She barely holds back her tears, realizing that Emmanuel is right. It was time for the live broadcast again. The audience was very curious about what Emmanuel wanted to tell them all. He stated that in modern times, people have become blind, living in a virtual world and not seeing the truth. Emmanuel used to despise all these people, but now for money, he has become one of them. For the first time, Emmanuel removed his glasses in public and asked everyone in the hall to close eyes with their palms. This is what Emmanuel feels every second of his life. But it is darkness that develops a person's imagination, in a sense making them more sighted. Emmanuel intends to share all the winnings among his loyal friends who have always supported him no matter what. His words touched everyone deeply. Emmanuel was absolutely right. Now everyone has begun to forget what it means to be human. Desiree was outraged by Emmanuel's behavior, who spoke ill of television, but Aya and Alessia stood up for him. Desiree felt humiliated. After the show, Emmanuel once again thanked his friends for everything they had done for him. In the final shot, we see Emmanuel smiling. He has finally heard the voice of God and is about to paint his portrait. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.